again. As always, I'm your host, Lothran, and we're here to talk about the inherent meaning of an ancient home and why it's been passed down through the ages. The story starts with the implied blade trope. Among the jackals, it typically insinuates confusion, either in the context of what's happening or in the nature of the threat in the monster or the tale itself. In the story, we find Kara, a young girl of indeterminate age, likely in the age of 6 to 10, convinced that a monster is coming for her. Whatever the case may be, her choices or her inactions force her into a corner, both mentally and physically, and Kara continually chooses to fall apart under the stress and pressure of what's happening. Now, you might say, who would specifically blame her? And certainly I would not, but we must remember that this is a jackal's story, and it's a method to enact a certain way of thinking. So Kara represents an inability to question one's surroundings and the lack of being able to formulate multiple hypotheses as to what's going on. And the evidence in the story is how the listener must react. Since Kara chooses not to, we have to pick up the pieces and choose to act for ourselves. Now, most of the story, the monster isn't it. Only once, depending on the teller of the tale, only once or a few times, would it ever be referred to as him. What we learn later is, it could be her grandfather, but is it to us? That's the important question that we must ask ourselves. So, we're not told for sure the way the story goes. And then even after the father arrives, it's still referred to as a monster. Now, most people would think that that is, because of Kara's perspective and we're sharing it, but we're more viewing Kara in this situation than we are sharing the role of what's happening to Kara with her. And the father doesn't believe that it's, a monster, and he offers a lot of evidence that it couldn't be. He may be right. He certainly has all that evidence. But he may be wrong, too. He may just be ignoring the possibility that there is a monster there instead of his own father. Or the father of his wife. Whoever the grandfather may be. And then, after that, we have the monster itself, which it could be her grandfather recovering from a long illness that affected the entire town. And what we really have to focus on is his or its behavior. If that behavior is the way that the grandfather is used to playing with Kara, is it something logical that he would enact without being able to notice the danger that Kara is putting herself into? Because she does go to an extreme length to escape him, and he doesn't seem to put too much weight on the possibility of her hurting herself while she's doing this. He just thinks it's a game. This could be because of diminished capacity of him being ill for so long, but he could also point to him actually being the monster and just sort of playing the role of the grandfather. And this is really the root of my doubt that he is the grandfather, because she's freaking out and he's just sort of laughing. Like, it doesn't seem that he's that caring of a person. And it's very questionable to me, why he would continue to behave that way while Kara is beyond possibility of freaking out. She's losing her mind in this story, essentially, and he's just laughing about it. It's very cruel to me for him to behave that way, and it seems incredibly monstrous for him to do so from my perspective. So as I see it, he's very much the monster. That's the evidence I put forth. Now, when I learned this story, the jackal that told me this story was very pleased with my response, and that I had evidence for what I, chose to answer. But they left me in that hall of mirrors with its, infinite supply of twists and turns. Could it be? Couldn't it be? Because it's a very jackal response to a moral tale that they're telling, that they don't provide the answers. They let you think of them on your own. Now, what you really have to remember is the jackals come from a very dark place, and life is intensely difficult there. And then, are you sure you know what's possible and what's regular, what's normal there? And I think I have an idea, but I'm still very unsure, and I really think that's what makes this story a better horror story, is because the way it ends, it leaves the listener or the reader very unsure, in the same way that Kara is at the end. Like, she doesn't know what's going on, and neither do you. You've been presented some evidence, you've seen some events take place, but you're in a very confused position. You have only so much to go on. There's not enough to really formulate a solid case one way or the other. There's more questions than answers at that point. And then, in the form of the story, it's like this is something the jackals are trying to teach. They're trying to teach you to question yourself and the position that you're in at all times. And I want to leave you there, because it's also the shape of the story is where we've arrived. So I don't want to tell you what the answer is. I want you to figure it out for you. Where, after hearing that story, do you come from? What point have you arrived at? Was it a monster? Was it her grandfather? Was the child confused? Was she correct and everybody else was unaware? That's the sort of thing I'd like to hear from you. What is your opinion about what is going on in the story? So, as always, I've been Lothran. This is the discussion of the second story from the Heart of the Jackals, An Ancient Home, and I implore each and every one of you to stay safe out there.